Welcome to the Present Fathers Podcast. This is the show that focuses on climbing the mountain of fatherhood together. We believe that dads matter. That's why this show is for you. So gear up, dads. Get ready. It's time to start climbing.
Welcome to another episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. Our guest today is the incredible Daniel Yoshimi, a renowned life coach and the driving force behind Dad is Progress Coaching. Daniel's dedication to empowering men as better leaders within their households has inspired countless fathers to strengthen their familial bonds and embrace the roles with intentionality and love. His expertise extends far beyond this, though, coaching individuals on vital topics such as overcoming porn addiction, recovering and reconnecting with family, addressing trauma, fostering forgiveness, nurturing their inner child, and unlocking the power of somatics. With his transformative guide, The Ultimate Guide to End Porn Addiction and Reconnect with Your Family, Daniel has impacted the lives of many fathers, guiding them through personal growth and helping them establish lasting legacies of love and strength. Welcome, Daniel, to our podcast. We really appreciate you coming on tonight. So, Daniel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Don't make any fun, Justin.
My Goblin got you.
Thank you for the beautiful introduction. I moved to US 23 years ago. I was 22, and I was working a surf shop, and we got robbery really bad. My manager got shot, crazy Brazil stuff. And I was like, I got to get out of here. And then we moved to California. We moved actually to Santa Barbara, where I live today. And it was great, just living the life. Surfing was one of the biggest things. It's still in my life, it is. And then a few years passed, I went back to Brazil. And my dad called me and say, I got to talk to you. And my dad never talked to me. And I was like, wow, this is something. So I remember going to his room. He shut the door. There was nobody there, but he shut the door, sit here. And I was like, wow, what's going on? He said, your sister, your younger sister, is not my daughter. And I was like, what? Hold on, because my whole life I've known that my daughter, he was the father of my both sisters. And, he said he tried to take care of her for a few years, but he couldn't handle and he had to bail. And then fast forward, I was about 25 years old. He tells me that. So that day, my heart got broken. What happened was I was expecting my mom to tell me, because I went back to my mom and say, Mom, why didn't you ever tell me that? I didn't say that, but that was my question. I was like, in that day, I felt my mom betrayed me. So my love story changed completely. I couldn't receive love anymore. And it's easy to say that I couldn't receive love, but really feeling the love is really powerful. When we talk about somatics, somatics is the biggest challenge for my clients to really dive in and say, let's do breath work. Let's put your hands on the heart. Let's feel what's going on. No, we, as a man, want to stay on the head. No, it's fine. I'm okay. And that's how I deal with it. I was like, you know what? It's okay. My mom, I know that she loves me. I am in her house right now. We still love each other. But from that day, my love story, my love connection changed. 10 years after, I get married, have my first kid, second kid. I never had a very good intimacy. I was cheating in all my relationships after that event, and I didn't know that. a few years ago, a couple years ago, I became a life coach. And I was like, whoa, I gotta go and dive deep in what's going on. So pornography, it was something that it was a normal thing. Let's just watch some pornography. It's okay. It gets me excited. I can create more connection with my wife because I get hyper. I have this dopamine. So I have all this wrong understanding of what love is, what creating connection is. And I always wanted to be a father. There was no question about it. So a couple years ago, become a life coach, do all this work with fathers, start with like working pornography more with some clients. And then I was like, what I want to do is empowering fathers, because I became one. I became a father that's present. And I love the name of the podcast. If there's one thing you got to do in your life, it's being present. Present is the biggest gift you can give to anyone, not your wife, everyone. If you give your presence to someone, it's a gift. Especially today, we have so much information. Like it's everywhere is information. Everybody's on the phone. Like when you give your presence, look in the eyes and say, hey, I hear you. I feel you. And I have no idea what that is, what that was. So through my process, before I became a life coach, I went to containers, pay a chunk of money. Like I want to do this, I want to get better. And just going back here, the presence was something that I didn't have it. And just to go reward 10 years ago, I opened a restaurant. I opened the famous $1 million business, right? So everybody says, I want $1 million. Like, okay. And that really destroyed my life too. I learned so much, but I was not present. And that was one of the things when the pandemic came. I'm kind of going all over, but just to finish this part. When the pandemic came, I started to work a lot less. And I started to what? Be present with my kids. I'm getting emotional now because I can feel like, oh man, I fail as a father because I left them. I was in the restaurant. They were, many times there. They grew up in the restaurant. And then pandemic came, I was working less. I started managing the restaurant through home. When pandemic was ending and business is coming up again, I have to work more. I was lost. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. And that's when I signed up for my first container of coaching. I have a friend, I have a lot of friends now, but I have a friend that was a coach. He also works with men, which is beautiful. He does rite of passages, which I'm doing one. It's 4 days without food by yourself on the desert. I'm super scared. And I call him and he's like, dude, go for it. Do it. And after I did the container, I was like, you know what? We have to move out from the restaurant. And I'm going to, do coaching. That's what I want to do. I want to and that time I didn't know that I was be fatherhood, but then I started to dive into it and I was like, that's what I want to do it. So I see Justin has a question. So I put on the chat here. So
yeah, Daniel.
Yeah.
Oh,
Dustin.
You go, Dustin. You go, Dustin.
You guys got to change your names.
I know. Yeah, it's too close. So Daniel, how does watching pornography lead to a father not being present? What is the mechanism that causes that?
So it can be many things. Okay. Each problem, I hate when I see those, just join my program and you're going to finish your pornography addiction. It's usually a trauma story that we have it, but I'll give you a few examples so you can see. So when you're watching pornography, first of all, you hiding that. You're not doing in front of your kids. You're not doing in front of your wife. So you're not being honest right there. And that's one of my values in life. Let's be honest here, right? I want my kids to feel, not even see. Kids learn by example, and they feel it. A lot of the things we don't understand about the somatics, the kids are champions on somatics. They scream, they yell, they do all that.
Now for our listeners, what is somatics? Can you go through that real quick, and then we'll kind of step back into the process of the porn?
Basically, it's how the body speaks. For example, before I come into the podcast, I was like anxious, right? So I'm going to go into my body. It's like, oh, I feel anxious. I acknowledge that. So it's a very huge concept, but basically it's when the body is speaking. When we start to like feel, instead to start to go here, we go in the body. Because the body keeps the whole trauma. Our head, the trauma is too much for our head. We cannot cope with that, especially if it's like sexual abuse, car accidents, many traumas. It goes to the body and gets stored on the body. So we need to process that. You know, I have a story about that. I'll tell quick. I ruptured my Achilles, and I was 36. I was fit, eating health. I was like, what the heck is going on? By that time, I didn't know. I was like, oh, it's just an injury because I work out a lot. I teach martial arts. I surf, all this. But later on, after my coaching, I'm like, I was emotionally destroyed that age. And that came out. People like, oh, really? I was like, well, that's a little part of the somatics. When you really started to understand and feel at your body. That answer your question?
Yeah, so you're listening to the natural behaviors of your physical body. Okay, great. So I'm sorry, let's go back to the pornography and how it takes away from being present.
Yeah, so the integrity is the first one because, you know, you're not going to use with the, you know, we're going to say, my wife, hey, can I use the pornography? Maybe there is a consent there, and that's a little, okay, it's fine. That's a healthy use of pornography. You know, when you have consent, when you're doing, you know, you're present on doing that thing. But usually it's not. I have some numbers here that, you know, it's insane, the pornography industry. It's scary. 35% of the downloads on the internet is pornography. So let's not even go there because that's the numbers are super scary. We can go after the dust in here. So that's one thing, integrity. Second thing, I am objectifying the woman. What that means, I'm turning the woman to a sex object. Why that? Because I see this pornography, I have a huge dopamine hit. It's like, wow, man, that was amazing. And I go to my wife and I'm having sex, think about that. So I'm not connecting at all with her. She's just an object of sex. Of course, we don't realize that. Trying to get in one more example here. The lack of intimacy. I think it all comes to really understand what intimacy is with your wife as well. So when you're using pornography, your intimacy is getting away from each other. Because you're not creating connections, you're objectifying the woman, you're not telling her the truth. So there's so many things that's going to take your presence away. And, you know, it's so shady because you have to hide that thing. The problem with pornography, the access is so easy. If you go here, we type something, I'm sure something's going to come up and for free. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality.
So what I hear you saying is that basically there's a lot of guilt and shame for a man when they're hiding their addiction, and they don't want to put it in the light because it just creates more shame and guilt, right? And that on the flip side of that, the more that they engage in pornography, the more unrealistic expectations they have of their wife and of their sexual encounters with their wives. And then you're saying on top of that, they're not even really intimately and emotionally connected to their wives, but they're actually just connected to the thoughts in their head of which they saw on the pornography. So there's a lot of just like anchors tying them away.
To make it even worse, you saw, you know, that crazy thing on whatever website is, when you go and have sex with your wife, it's not the same. You're like, oh shit, my sex life is okay. Of course it's okay, because you have these illusionary thoughts, and what you saw, that's not reality. And this is really cool, because when I got into really connect with my wife in a deeper level, and just pause during sex and feel her breath, like somatic. I'm like connecting with the breath, because when you very close to someone, we start getting the same breath. And I started feeling, and I was like, wow, sex is getting better. At 46, I'm 46, sex is just getting better now. And when I started to create this intimacy, my life changed. I was like, I gotta somehow get this man. Because like I said, there's many reasons you can go. There's traumatic experience that you can just not receiving love is one. You don't know how to do with love. You don't know how to receive the love. That was a huge issue for me. I couldn't receive love. My mom triggered me. And I have to go. And it was one of the hardest talk I had in my life. Say, Mom, I got to talk to you. I want to ask what happened. I want to ask questions. And it was beautiful. And from that moment, I started my healing journey. And what happened is I heal my wound with my mom. We call them mother wounds, mother and father wounds, which we all have it, because our fathers are our caretakers. When I started healing that, my relationship with my wife started to change. And I started to really understand what love is. And that was definitely a pivotal moment in my life where I was like, whoa, I never knew that I have this hole in my heart. And going there, like I said, it was one of the hardest things I did in my life. Just to come sit down with my mom and ask her powerful questions. Like questions that I don't want to ask still, but I went there. And that's one of the healings that I also work with a lot of fathers, is their parents. It's a huge part. And, we are parents, we're going to fail, we're going to do mistakes, but we can also reparent. Okay, I know I don't like to cuss here, but I cussed to my kid, she was 13, and I cussed her. I was like, ah. Did I cuss? Sorry. Justin's laughing. So, and I lost it. So I walk out of the room. And I did a somatic breathing. I was like, okay, you just fucked up. I accept that. I acknowledge that. Okay, now I can go there. I open her door and say, hey, I'm really sorry. This is going on, and I don't want to be like that. And there's nothing that you did wrong. It's on me. So I think I kind of answered that question of Dustin. Is that right? More stuff will come out, because the pornography, it is a huge industry. There's I got some numbers from the internet, and it's about $100 billion industry right now. And 52% of men between 39 and 45 are using it. And when I think about that, 39 to 45 is when you get your second child, your children are growing up, and what is left? What is left is keep creating the connection. You guys had a podcast here with a guy that says 4 things a father should have. And he said last one was growth, learning. And that's one of my values. Because we have to keep learning, we have to keep growing, and growing our connections. And going back to the very first part, growing and being present. How can I be more present? Just one more thing about being present is when your kid's doing something, oh, Dad, look at here. You say, oh, that's great. That's not being present. Being present is going there and it's like, whoa, tell me more. What do you see there? How is this? And what is that? It's like, oh, okay. So those connections I didn't have in my life, you know, and I don't blame my parents because they did their best with what they knew by that time. But now I get to research even more to know more so I can give even more for my kids.
Yeah. So you discussed like past traumas being one of the things that you had to fix for your pornography addiction. You discussed a couple other core issues that at least triggered the awareness that you needed to quit, like your intimacy or the lack thereof with your wife. So with your ultimate guide to end porn addiction, how are the ways that you address overcoming the struggle and rebuilding trust with your family for the men that you teach?
So, like I said, you know, each story is different. That's why it's very important to work someone, because we can work with that, you know, like 15-minute video and you watch like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And it's going to be good. It's going to be great. And you're going to do it. But something along the way is going to trigger you back. So acknowledging that that's an issue. So that's one of the most guilty thing. You come to your wife, you know. I have a client that, you know, he was 6 years in pornography. And it's like, I haven't told her. I was like, okay, what do you want to do? What do you think you should do? I got to tell her. Go ahead, tell her. You know, you just need to accept that it's okay, man. We're going to fail. We're not perfect. So acknowledging that that's a problem. And then when you acknowledge, start asking powerful questions. You know, one exercise that I do is the values. What is the values in your life? You know, you can say my family, health, and growth. 3 of my values, right? Does watching pornography aligns with your family values? Does watching pornography aligns with your growth? It's like, you fucking know. Sorry, because again, Justin is gonna just enjoy. It's like, man, George's not here, so we take advantage of it.
You're gonna get me in trouble.
I'm gonna be in trouble. So I acknowledge that. Okay. The second one, as a man, we like a plan. It's like, you know what? I'm gonna give you 2 weeks. August 20, I'm gonna quit. You know, and I'm gonna keep my word. Then we have an accountability. You share with someone, share with a friend. Say, hey, man, I'm facing this problem. I want you to hold me accountable. That's why men's group are really important for that cause. Or, you know, just have a, you know, we talk about there's a lot of men's group. It's great. Men's group. What you guys have here is a men's group. You know, getting together here on the podcast, online, you guys are holding each other accountable. You know, I mean, if one of you guys start to doing something that's like not aligned, you're gonna call it love. It's like, man, we're talking about this on the podcast and you're doing that. That doesn't work.
We've had some tough interchanges. Yeah, we've had to let each other know you're not.
We definitely hold each other accountable. That's why I say this is our therapy, because we grow with every father that comes on here, or every person's story, and we can learn from their story. But you know, it's more not only the stories that change, it's just seeing the effects that, you know, change brings for all these men and for their families. We want that for our families. So
yeah, for sure. And that's beautiful, because you guys are reaching out with something that's so positive and so needed right now. We talked a little bit before, the masculine side being destroyed by the feminine movement, you know. So we got to empower our boys. I have 2 girls too, but I want to empower the boys so my girls can have a man that can hold them, a man that can lead them. You know, and I say that with passion. I can feel it. Again, somatics, I can feel it, like my body is going, because I want a real man for my kids. I don't want a guy that's like just, you know, providing, you know, that. But let's stop here. Let's go back to Brandon just to finish that, because you say, you know, you acknowledge the problem. The accountability is great. Sharing with someone is really powerful, because the guy might say, it's like, dude, I have the same problem. And that happens a lot on the containers that I put it together. When one guy speaks something, it's like, oh, I'm facing the same thing. And together we're stronger. Together it's easy to do it. And as a man doesn't need help. That's how you grow up. Your dad say, come on, get up, man, let's go. Oh, stop crying. Don't do that. Oh, you can do it. You know, that's my story. But I know I speak for a lot of men because we never got acknowledged. It's like, oh, you fell, man. That really hurts. Like, my dad never said that. You know, you fell. You get up, man. Come on. We got to go. So those principles is very important to bring it back. Right? And then, you know, to finish, I think what really heals someone to get off pornography is building the intimacy. And of course, that was my road. When I started discovering this layer of intimacy, man, and you know, there's a lot of little things that I say, you know, try to hold her hands. Like tonight, you're going to go out, hold her hands. Like as soon as you let it go back and grab her hand. I have a ritual every morning, give my wife a hug and say good morning. Many days I don't want to do it, but somatically, I know that I need to feel her body. And when I do it, I feel better. Sometimes don't, but it's a process. I'm putting my money and time on my growth, and that is my practice. A lot of people get a lot of videos, a lot of information, listen to this podcast here, but when are you going to practice? You know, I had a client that was like, yeah, I know all this information. I was like, okay, so what are you going to do with the information?
Right. Knowledge versus application.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, just to finish that, the intimacy is the huge piece that's going to really, you don't want to do more pornography after you really become intimate, because that's going to give you the presence and intimacy with your kids, which sometimes you don't understand. Like intimacy with my kids, yes. You know, you get to really know them. They get to feel you, get to feel them.
Yeah, and it's so crazy. What a lot of people don't realize is, you know, I know we did talk about masculinity, and it's because if you look at all the amazing guys we've had on this show, all of them talk about one specific thing, and that's how society is trying to kill masculinity and the traditional father. Fathers are supposed to be present. They're supposed to be masculine. They're supposed to be leaders who lead by example, not by words. And they're also supposed to be somebody who is always going to try to do the right thing no matter what their wants or needs are. So they're not selfish. But the problem is when you kill masculinity, you're killing a lot of parts of a healthy relationship that women need to have intimate feelings towards you. And that's what a lot of guys get into addiction from, is lack of intimacy. They feel like the wife doesn't want anything, so they're looking for an outlet. They're looking for somewhere, you know, that they can go and feel love or feel that dopamine rush. But what people don't realize is that this is the same addiction as heroin. It's such a strong dopamine hit that you become, you know, trained to not feel anything. And then you finally just become numb and you wonder why you don't feel emotions. It's a never-ending cycle, and that's why guys don't understand is that the killing of masculinity is what leads to these major issues, because your family could be whole if you're the masculine role model and you're doing the things that, you know, a lot of our guests give examples to do. If you do these things, like John Michael Clark said in this upcoming episode we got coming out, do these things, your wife will not be able to keep her hands off you. And then you won't have to worry about pornography, because you will have the intimacy. You will have, you know, all the things that you need in life. You will be present with not only her, but with your kids and everyone else. So I think it is a never ending cycle. Once you get in it, it's very hard to get off that wheel. And I think masculinity and accountability are definitely huge answers. I really appreciate the fact that you said that, because I think those two for me are what holds me from doing stuff like that. Because I think about, if I were to use pornography, I would stop and think, you know, oh, well, I'm not doing right by myself. I'm only hurting myself. I'm hurting the way I feel on a daily basis, but I'm also hurting my family, because is this the kind of man I want my kid, my daughter in the future to marry? Do I want a man that doesn't show her affection and love? No, of course not. You want someone who's going to be an example of you and your family. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents, but I appreciate the fact you said those things.
I love that. There's two things there. The awareness that you have between, oh, I'm going to do pornography, and then there's awareness. That's a gap that that's how you create. When you have that awareness of asking powerful questions, you don't go that way. The polarity about the feminine and the masculine is really important to have it. And like you say, I even the conspiracy theory, like they're killing that. The feminine movement is great. There is a lot of laws and payments, and yes, but also we need to understand that we got empowering our boys. We need to show those kids, hey, I have an example. I was with my kid. He switched from a little bike, he's 4 years old, to a bigger bike, 12-inch wheel to a 16. It's a huge difference for him, not for us. For me, I'm tall, it's a little bike, I was just moving to another bike. So I was like, well, how am I going to push him to be a strong man, but also in a lovely way? So I started to see the problem with his own eyes. I was like, well, he is 4 years old. It is a huge change. So I acknowledged that. I was like, wow, is he going for a big bike? So I started to see the problem with his eyes, and he gave up. And I would stick with him. I was present. Love the name. I was present with him. I was like, no, I'm going to stay present. It's not about you have to be patient when you're parents. It's like, yes, you have to be patient, but we also creating this connection. So I'm telling you, it was about 4 hours, guys. It wasn't just, I was like, you know what? Let's go get some food. Because like, well, maybe he's hungry too. Let's feed him. I was like, okay, we're going to feed. And my son, he's a little hypersensitive. So I have to give him a plan. I need to really understand what this scenario is. Oh, we're going to go. It's going to be loud. So I said, we're going to go get food. And then we're going to come back to this bike lane here. And we're going to try one more time. He's like, okay, Daddy. And then a few tries, a lot of tries, I was going to say, for about 4 hours. He's riding the bike and saying, but Dad, this is the fastest bike ever, and I'm going to call it Speedy.
I love it. That's amazing.
Dustin, I think you wanted to say something there.
Yeah, I love to hear that about overcoming those challenges. I've been teaching my son how to swim, and he went from a lot of fear to he cannot get enough of the water. And it just happened overnight, probably about a 2 or 3 hour period of really getting in the pool and getting rid of that fear. And there's nothing more fun than giving your children those skills and watching them ride a bike or swim. It's such a wonderful feeling. I was looking at a chart a minute ago, and I wanted to ask your take on this. And it seems to be related to triggers for men. So erectile dysfunction was about 15 to 20% of the population in young men under 40 back in the 1970s. And it looks like it's getting closer to 40 or 50% among men under 40 for Americans today. So it's a very big problem. And some of that is probably due to obesity, health issues, things like that. But I wonder if some of it is due to the brain kind of being rewired by pornography to where they're only interested in what they see on the computer versus, with their relationships. I'm curious your take on that.
Well, my take will go to being physical. I think when you stop being physical, and I mean exercising and pushing that's going to affect your brain. Many studies, how to keep your brain health is exercising. So I preach that for my kids. I do believe there's no better way to take care of, well, I'm going to go a little route different here because I'm not an expert on that, but I cope with my traumas because of my martial arts. I had a lot of anger. I was like, I am exploding anytime. Let's fight. And that when the somatic came, I started to process anger, which is physical. So going back to that, Dustin, I think the problem today is it's okay to have a big belly. as a dad, it's became very comfortable to not work out, not do something. I do martial arts. I done seen my whole life. I teach martial arts, done so many. I think every father should do martial arts. Every man should do martial arts, because first of all, you're providing safety. You know, there is for now. This is cool because I know I'm moving a little bit over, but for you to build intimacy with your wife, she needs to be safe. Sometimes it's financial, emotional. Sometimes it's physically. We have to go back to traumas, because if she was, you know, her father used to beat her up, she's going to look for a man that can protect her. There's no doubt about it. She's not going to get a weak guy. Doesn't, you know, yeah, maybe he's financially successful, but if that doesn't have the physical, she's not going to. So for me, all these numbers that we see, like, you know, things getting worse and worse, is about we getting back to our principles of being a man, being the protector, hey, I'm here to protect you. You know, I'm here to make you feel safe. You know, and this is the somatic comes into it. If you walk in the street, it's dark. You and your wife, there's two guys coming in. The first thing I'm going to do is grab my wife, her hands. She's going to feel it, that, hey, I'm here. You know, so I think that moving the body, it's really important. And I think that's where the gap is happening right now. It's okay. And look, kids learn by example. If you see your dad growing the belly, it's like, you know what? I don't need to do exercise. I don't need to take care of my body. It's okay. Look at my dad. He doesn't take care of his body. Why am I going to do it? That makes sense, Dustin. I know it's a little...
No, it's a strong point.
Oh, the dad bod is not great. I know. We joke about it all the time. Oh, you have a dad bod. No big deal. It's in. And yeah, a big belly, you know, makes a lot of things that you want to work not work as well. Your knees hurt. Your brain isn't as sharp. And, you know, your... maybe downstairs isn't firing on all cylinders like it used to.
It's so true. I mean, testosterone levels will rise as you exercise. Right. You know, and it's basic. It's like basic math, you know. And we are human beings. We're supposed to be moving. You know, we're not supposed to be sitting. We're not supposed to be on screens the whole time. You know, I have a lot of practice that I do for my sleep, for like not being online. You know, being present. For example, there's two things that I do on my phone. You know, after my shower, it's about 8 p.m., it's off. I put on airplane mode. When I wake up in the morning, until the kids are in the car, going to school, I don't turn on my phone. I don't have any distractions there. Because one thing comes, another thing comes, like, you know what? No. I'm going to take the kids, so I'm going to be present this morning, the kids, because that's the time that I have with them. You know, so, but the dad belly, doesn't do for me. I unfortunately, and I have a lot of judgment, and I kind of let it, like, I have to coach myself. It's like, no, it's so you don't know their story, but.
Well, the physicality behind it is definitely an element, but there's definitely another neurological and a psychological element there too, because pornography addiction, time and time again, has, as far as like testing and scientific research, has shown that it results in physical changes, specifically in the shrinking of gray matter in your brain, right? It diminishes executive function. You're critical to affect decision making, your self-control. It diminishes and creates a loss of healthy neurons. So there's a lot of things that mentally pornography will destroy in your mind. And we see that because there's a degradation. And one of the really interesting things that I've seen, like Jordan Peterson and a couple other psychologists talk about, is people with psychosis, like psychotic people or sociopathic people, all the ones that ended up being mass murderers or serial killers or anything like that, they usually point back their start of their journey was pornography. And so it's definitely a very dangerous, slippery slope for a lot of men, unfortunately. And I can't stress enough that it's thrashing men's brains, and they don't realize it. They're just focused on the ecstasy of the quick satisfaction of it, and it's so sad. And that's why I try to help encourage dads to remove it from their lives. And there are apps that help with that. One of them specifically being the Covenant Eyes app. I've helped a couple of men be held accountable. I would hold them accountable on their pornography addiction to help them quit. And so when I would see a report, the report would tell me whether or not they've been looking at pornography. And if they have, I'd call them up and say, "Hey, brother, we need to discuss this. You know, we gotta work on this. So what happened? What triggered it? And how do we help you not be triggered by this? How do we help you cope? Like you said, exercise, diet, things that help you control yourself mentally." So yeah, that's one of the things that just, it's really bothered me, because I've seen so many men affected by it. And Daniel, one of my questions to you is, you were discussing how you want to raise your boys to be good men, to be masculine men. How are you, through your guide, and to your coaching, how are you coaching them to stay away from pornography?
The first thing is to talk about it. Okay? Sex is something that my parents never talked about it to me. And then when I got out in the streets, about 13 years old, to become a man, you had to have sex. So my story around sex, it was all messed up. So the first thing is to have open conversations about sex, and that goes all the time. Me and my wife, and I have to give this a lot to my wife, because she never had any problem talking about my kids about sex. If we think about sex, is the most beautiful thing we have. It's how we're made. That's life right there. And through the years, there's all this, of course, there's pornography, but it became something that's dirty. And, there's a lot of women that are really empowered, like sex coaches that bring that back. And I think for my boy, I have 2 girls and 1 boy, but for all of them, I want to talk about it. When I talk about it, they have the right to talk about it. That's how they feel. So when I'm sharing, they feel that they can share. If I cry, they feel they can cry. So they're learning by example. If I'm coming to my boy and say, giving nicknames, all these nicknames, this is your penis. That's our vagina, vulva, whatever you want to call. Starting there, on the way here, I was dropping my daughter to volleyball, 14 years old. And I said, I'm going to do a podcast, and it's going to be about pornography. She's like, I was like, yeah, unfortunately, it is a huge topic nowadays. And I mean, 90% of children under 12, okay, are using pornography. So, okay, we get the kids here. 9% of
did you say 90%, Daniel?
Nine. It is my broke English here. After 23, I still don't know.
That's such a shocking number that I.
But 90%, if you are 12 years old, hold on. How are you getting access? And then that's your parents. That's your fault, not controlling your kids.
Not protecting them. You're not protecting them, right? You're not involved in their life enough to know that this is occurring.
Exactly. How come a 9 years old is going to get into the, you need to be aware. I understand that you go to a restaurant, got to put your kid on the iPad or whatever. I'm against that. I make a plan. I have several games I do on the table with my 4 years old, and there is no phone for him. There is nothing, because he's going to start to know later on when he's 9, he can do anything. So You know, when you think about the number, that I always go back to the number, you know, 35% of downloads are pornography on the internet today. 35%, 1/3 of what is available, which we have so much great information here today, is pornography. We need to take action. You guys here are taking action, bring it up, and let's bring the subject. Let's talk more. Let's go there, you know, because it's not okay.
Right. Especially for children. And the good news is there's a lot of states last month, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, that recently passed a bill that requires a specific signature login in order for people to access pornography. And so the age restriction thing is starting to become a real relevant thing. And they're actually building it to where you can literally go to any of these websites and it shows that you have to sign these things and you have to prove your age. And that involves like identification verification, stuff like that. And so that's a great first step. But then, unfortunately, we have things like OnlyFans, and we have people just exacerbating that issue. Like a lot of younger men, especially gamer generation, are just, they call it simping or lusting after women. And it's an unfortunate side effect because there's only a specific group of men that women target as far as, you know, who they chase after, who they select as potential mates or potential husbands. And the rest of them are left to fend for themselves in loneliness and isolation. And then they look on the internet and they have anything that fulfills any kind of destiny or fantasization that they want. And so it's a very unfortunate byproduct of having internet. But I love Justin, I'd love for you guys to jump in and maybe touch on that as well.
Go ahead, Dustin.
So I read an article yesterday that Andreessen Horowitz, which is a prominent multi-billion-dollar venture capital firm, is developing a specialized kind of relationship chatbot, essentially, that will be AI, like the most beautiful woman you can imagine. And then, you know, she's AI powered to talk to you. And so I'm curious, Daniel, your thought on, you know, how are men going? I mean, you know, pornography in the 70s is very different, you know, than it is today. It's a whole different experience. And as these companies are pouring probably millions to billions of dollars into these new technologies to just target the limbic system directly, you know, what do you do aside from just staying away from it and closing your eyes and running away screaming? You know, it's interesting, these new.
You know, it made me sick when you mentioned that, because it is a annually $12 billion industry. It's insane. You know, how do you fight that? It's like, you know, you want to fight the government about how the healthcare system works. It's almost impossible. So it is empowering the leaders of the family, which are the fathers. It is what we're doing right here. You know, because we're going to connect here. You know, with this, we don't have, it was great information. Okay, we can get a lot more, yes. But if we have, with this information here, there's another father that listen, and there's another one, and another one. There's no effect, you know, snowball effect. Little by little, we're going to starting to understand that this must be taught. This gotta be exposed a lot more than it is, because everything is hidden. If you see, of course, you know, it's like, but when I said pornography, a lot of people, you know, one of my first posts when I started becoming coach, I have friends in Brazil calling me. It's like, hey dude, what's going on, man? What's going on with the pornography? It's like, yeah, let's talk about pornography. I think bring this subject, having more podcasts, because podcast is such an open platform for rich people, sharing as much as you can. And if you see someone with that issue, like, hey man, let me support you. You know, if you don't have, if you cannot give itself that support, it's like, hey, I know where you can go. It's a big fight, man.
Well, I was going to say the one thing that I've always found leads men down dark roads is just one feeling, and that's loneliness. We've all felt loneliness. We all feel alone as men, especially in a world like today's. Let's just be honest. The world, it separates us as much as it possibly can from each other. And loneliness is definitely something that I've even combated still to this day. I mean, I feel, issues with that every now and again, but loneliness they actually did. I read something yesterday when we were preparing for this. There was a study. It's called In Pornography Use and Loneliness, a Bidirectional Recursive Model and Pilot Investigation. So literally 4 doctors studied almost 1,300 patients, and they found that pornography use begets loneliness and loneliness begets pornography use. So it's just a vicious cycle. The lonelier you feel, the more you want pornography. And the more pornography you use, the lonelier you feel. So it's never ending. And they found that, porn use, regardless of someone's situation, significantly increased loneliness. So that's something that a lot of men already struggle with anyways, is loneliness and feeling like they don't have support. So I think you mentioning support is definitely one of the biggest things, because we as men, we all feel those things. We won't admit it. We won't. But
right there, once you acknowledge that, that's the first step. Once you have more people talking about and bring that on, we're going to realize, oh, maybe I should take a bigger look into this and ask some questions and just tap a little bit more. It's scary. What we just shared here, this is powerful, man. This is scary. I think as more we talk about it, as more we expose what really does to your brain, to your body, that's the only tools you have right now.
Yeah. And the two key things that will always combat the good is, one, we have a moral decay of society, right? We have a lot of fatherless children. We have a lot of young men that have no moral compass whatsoever. And it's just whatever their pleasure or temptation is at the time, they seek it, whether it's drugs, gaming, sex, anything. And unfortunately, the world is hypersexualized and hyperconnected. And those two things usually go hand in hand, unfortunately. And there's numerous other things that, and I think one of the hardest pills to swallow is that a lot of people are weak-minded, and so they have to be codependent. That they can't sit with loneliness or boringness. It just it's one of the things that they, whether it's trauma or whether it's some kind of past event, whatever it is, they can't sit with that. They have to go from one relationship to the next. They can't take a break and say, okay, what was my hand in my failed relationship? What was my hand in this addiction? And they can't sit in it. They always have to pass to the next thing, one after the other. And it's so unfortunate because, like you said, if there's an awareness, it's like, okay, I need to find a brotherhood, stop isolating. I need to have accountability. I need to steel my mind. I need to be able to be by myself, feel lonely, feel whatever emotions that I have, accept them, pass through them, and then work on making the good emotions the ones that are prevalent by practicing things that make me healthy, right? And so it's such a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. They don't want to accept the fact that they can't be alone. They're codependent, or they have multiple personality disorder. There's a lot of psychology there, but yeah, it's an unfortunate thing because all these things work together against somebody, right? And so I think you're right with the awareness part. It's a very important part of a piece of the puzzle there.
Well, you touched on something big too, something else that I didn't get to mention from that study I read about. The 2 greatest deterrents that they found of the 1,300 participants was greater religious value and higher education were the 2 largest deterrents from pornography use.
Wow.
So just put those, do with that what you will, I guess.
Yeah, and being a role model, when you are present, where you build intimacy, if your kids see, mom and dad kissing, hugging, holding hands, all of that, being a role model for our kids that's one of the biggest solutions, because our kids are our future. So if maybe the generation that's now, lost and feeling loneliness cannot handle that, not sure what's going to happen, but we can do with our kids. The next generation, we can show them, we can guide, we can lead, we can support them and show them, hey, this is the way. And that's what a father is. Hey, man, this is the way. Like we'll go back to like pushing your kids,
This is the way.
This is the way. Here you go. The war.
I had to. I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself. This is the way.
I'm your father. I'm not your father. What was it? I forgot.
Yeah.
So my son's name is Lucas, so I love to say, Luke, I am your father.
I love it.
So, being the father, that's our gift. Understanding fatherhood is a gift. You get to be the leader. And you have to choose, how you're going to lead them. Awareness again, Brendan, you have the awareness of like how I'm going to lead my kids.
So what do you, just looking at how we're having to adapt as fathers, the modern father, so to speak, how do you envision a father adapting, like, let's say, some of the key attributes to being an effective father, outside of awareness and education? Is there anything specific that you think would help them become better fathers?
Can you ask one more time the question?
Sure. So, fathers are evolving. And there's a lot of things that, like technology, that make us evolve, and those kind of things. So is there anything like attribute wise that you think would make a father more effective in his fatherhood journey?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things will help the journey. One exercise that I love is the values. So when I do my values, I can do everything, all my actions based on the values. If I'm in trouble, I don't really understand if I should go right or left. I was like, what do my values say? Like I say, family is my value. Growth. Growth is very important for a father. A father must be seeking to grow, seeking to build more with the kids, with the family, whatever, for himself itself. One thing that when I start my containers, is what are you doing for yourself? You got to put yourself first. You're not being selfish, not at all. You got to put yourself first. Oh, no, but my wife, create the time. I like to serve, so I create the time. Sometimes it's 5 a.m. Sometimes I say, hey, my wife, I was going to say, hey, love, but then Justin's going to make fun of me. So I say, hey, love.
I'm not going to make fun of that.
I say, hey, love, I really got to go surfing. The waves are crashing, and I know the day is crazy. So I'm going to set up the breakfast. I'm going to put the clothes that the 4-year-old going to wear. I'm going to make his lunch. Is there anything else you need for me to go? I'm not giving much an option. I'm saying that I'm going surf, but I am setting her for success as well. And then, look, in the evening, you can go do yoga, whatever. You get your 3 hours.
I love it.
So going back to that, Brendan, I have a program that is coming up in October called Fill It Up. You got to fill it up your cup first. So that's where dad gets lost, because I got to do that for my wife. I got to do that for my kids. I get it. But first, what are you doing for yourself? You have a life too. You got to fulfill that life. Oh, yeah, my kids fulfill my life. My wife fulfill my life. I get it. But what would you like to do if you have a magical wand and have 2 hours right now? Well, what do you like to do? No, sit with that question. It's not like, oh, I will do this and then no. I'm going to do this. So we need to know that. So that's awareness of like, what I really want. I want my family to succeed and everything. But what I want for myself. For example, I need to feel good. So I'm going to show up for my kids. I'm going to show up for my wife. So if I fill it up my cup, then I'm going to be the best version of myself. And that's one of the biggest pieces as well for a man to accept that. You're not being selfish. You deserve this.
I really like that.
And I can't be a good father if I'm not happy. You know, I have to have my cup full before I can give my son what he needs. I took my son to karate lessons for the first time today. He's 3.5. And it's interesting what you mentioned, because I see so many dads and moms that don't really participate. They bring their children to an activity like baseball, for example, and they sit and they watch and they have no interaction at all. And I took my son to karate, and he's young, so of course that's part of it. When he's older, they might not be as encouraging, but they said do the punches and the kicks with him. So I did an hour karate lesson with my son.
Dustin got beat up.
Yeah, exactly. The sensei is this lovely 75-year-old woman. And, I have some red marks on my face because she beat me up, but, that's okay. She's skilled. I'm not, it's not emasculating. But doing that with him brought me a lot of joy. And I think that's something that I'm going to make a point of, is that if I'm going to have if I'm going to drive my son to an activity, I'm going to be involved in some way, whether it's as a coach or as an umpire or something. I'm not going to sit on the bleachers for 3 hours and not be a part of it, because that's just, it disconnects you from your children, and that's no fun. You have to go out and do some stuff with your kids yourself. So, Dana, you had mentioned some things about rites of passage, how you as an adult are going to do something. Do you have anything special that you have done with your kids where you say, all right, instead of just, all right, you went to college or you got a job or you had sex, these are kind of our traditional rites of manhood, so to speak. Do you have anything special that you've set aside for your children where you say, all right, these are some unique things that I'm going to teach you that mean that you've become a man or become a woman?
Love that. Yes. Before my both kids get their period, my wife started to put a book together, and what being a woman means. The menstruation is something beautiful, and every kid that you ask is like, oh my gosh, it's disgusting, is this, is that. So, and there's a lot of women that has trauma about their first period. There's traumatized for life. I know, because in containers that we coach, there was women and they're like sharing that. So we made a rite of passage for my kids when they got their period. We talked a while back, that's going to happen to your body, and that's beautiful. Bleeding, that's how life happens. It's sacred. So we did this kind of ritual with them, and it's still ongoing, Exactly. It's super positive. It is positive. How are you being born? It's because your mother had a period. That's it. It's a spiritual, beautiful thing. So our rites of passage for my girls, of course, for the boys, are going to be different, but it was teaching them all this about a woman's body, what's going to happen. And when the period came, they were fine. It was not as shocking. It's like, oh, I got my period. Of course, they share a little bit more with my wife, but, Dad, I need to go get pads. Like, oh, let's go. Just like last week, she's 13. I felt like, wow, man, she said in a way that was like, and, here's the thing. You have 1,000 opportunities to build intimacy with your kids if you pay attention. But we're busy. So stop. Drop the phone, drop everything, turn off everything, and start just to pay attention on them, being present with them. And, I was really excited because I caught that. I was like, oh, that felt so good to my ears when she said that. It's such like, oh, Dad, I need to go buy pads. Like, let's go. you know? So my rites of passage for the girls was, you know, me and my wife. And my wife was the one that was like really putting a lot of time together. And we're still going to finish, probably like the end of this year, we finished the whole thing. It was that. Another thing was when they moved, my 14 years old, she's going to high school now. We made a rite of passage with a group of 8 kids, me and my wife. We invite the other parents, like, hey, we want to do a rite of passage for them because it's another mark on your life. So we made a ritual, we made a ceremony. Me and my wife conducted the ceremony. We brought them together. We did a beautiful thing. We did several little things that was important. And it's a mark on their lives going from middle school to high school. The middle school process is really important. You know, I mean, I know that we are a little ahead. Brandon has a 9 years old, so you're going to that phase. You're going to see when the kid comes 11, he is going to like kind of like glue to the friends now. And how you bring them back, being present, chasing those 1,000 opportunities that we have, saying something, connecting, you know, asking powerful questions, all these little things. So that was my process for my girls. I have a 13. She has 1 more year in the middle school. And we're going to do another ceremony. If it's just her, we're going to do just her. We're going to stop. We're going to dress up. We're going to go to a beautiful place. We're going to write each other a letter and, you know, what she represents and all of that. For my boy, my goal is to do a rite of passage. I am doing one at 46 in the end of October. So I'm going to this desert and I'm going to be by myself without any food, without a shelter for 4 days.
It was nice knowing you. I'm glad we got to chat with you before.
I'm scared. Don't say. So Jerry Azuma is a coach, and he does this program. He does it with so many men. He works with men. So it's a good guy for guys to bring here. Jerry Azuma, I'll send his information. He's been doing men's work for a long time. And that's going to be my rite of passage because I didn't have that. And I feel that I need to face something really challenging. Because a rite of passage is when you face something that really challenge. You know, and I'm putting myself out there. You know, I'm going to be in this place that I don't know where it is. And for my son, I want to do something similar with that. I'll probably want to take him to nature and say, hey, maybe he spend one night by himself. I'll keep an eye, whatever I need to do it. But I want to do something like that. So now, you know, Dustin, I love that you asked this question because I think that's really important to mark a transition from a kid to a teenager to a man. And let's say we bring it back to the city, to the modern days. How am I going to create this rite of passage with my kids? Men are very creative. We're going to do something. So we're gonna bring, hey, look, you're going to become a man. That there's you know, you're going to explain to him. We're going to tell him what we're going to do. Maybe we're going to climb a mountain. Maybe if Dustin, your son is swimming, we're going to swim across this channel here. You know, in my opinion, got to be something that overcoming a challenge and supporting him through the challenge. You know, of course, we want to bring something that's doable. We don't want to say, hey, you're going to climb, Mount Everest. No, that's not going to work. But, you know, bring back to the city, to the modern days, you know, like, you know what? I'm going to do a 20-mile bike ride, you know. And that's going to be celebrated. And we're going to sit down, maybe in a fire, and say, hey, what was your biggest challenge during that? How was it? And we're going to talk about it. And you're going to give him a gift. It could be a little thing and say, hey, brother, no, but hey, here is a gift for you to remember this moment. You know, so I'm recognizing that kid is becoming a man. So that's how I would bring, you know, that rites of passage to the modern father's situation.
It's awesome. You gave me some great ideas for my son. I'm going to give him some challenges. We'll go hiking and do some, hunting and fishing and gathering, teach him some of the ways of the world and create some challenges for him and then celebrate it. I think that'd be great. Or even do it with a group,
Yeah. And there are groups out there, that does that, but if you hunt, if you fish, for example, like fishing is, the first door for like the hunting. You can set up like we're gonna go fishing, but here's the thing: we're gonna wake up, we're not gonna eat until we get the fish. Hopefully we get the fish, but I'm just a little trout. But
otherwise, Daddy's got some snacks in the back. I didn't tell you about. Sorry, kid, get that glycemic index up. Let's go.
You bring something here it's kind of a joke, but our kids are so like comfortable today with this snack thing. Oh, there's snacks. Like, you know what? I give my kids sometime 4 years old. I just take water. Dad, I want a snack. It's like, buddy, we got to go back home because we only have water. Oh my God. Okay. Now, if I say you only have water, let me have the water. Okay, let's go back home. So creating this too is also showing them like, hey, you're powerful. You have powerful. Maybe you didn't catch the fish, but I was like, we spent 6 hours there fishing. I'm so proud of you because we stick it, and I know that you won. It didn't happen, but here's your gift because that was a big challenge. Tell me about it. So we can create so many rites of passages. There's so many ways to do it, and you can go back to the ancient tradition of the indigenous, whatever your lineage come from too.
That's a great idea.
And I like the idea of tying privileges and responsibilities to that as well. Say you're 15 years old, you've passed the rite, you've caught the fish. But now, in addition to that, you get the privilege of being allowed to go outside by yourself for 8 hours, whereas you weren't allowed to before. But then the responsibility is that if you do something wrong, you lose that privilege, right? So I think tying that together with one major moment while you were together really cements it home that I was serious when I said these are your privileges and your responsibilities, and they can be taken away. So that's kind of an interesting option there too.
Yeah, and that's great, and bring me back to stick with that too. When you say no, it's a no. When you take that's an issue with younger kids. When you say no, and then you go yes, that's not good. You broke that. Then he knows that he's gonna go for that. Until you say yes. So
yeah, that's worse than if you just said yes the whole time.
Yeah,
you get 5 no's and a yes. All he hears is yes, and he can.
And this is leadership. This is like really teaching your kids, what it means to be a father. It's like, hey, this is a no. My 4 years old, I say, hey, buddy, I told you that's a no, and that is no negotiable. That's it. It's a no, and it's a no. He's gonna go and do it. Yes, that because he's 4 years old, but this is a no, and he will understand.
Yeah, that's so important. And I know my son's already starting to play my wife and I to where he'll ask mom, and then if she says no, he'll come ask me, and I'll say, oh, that seems fine, but let me go check with your mom first. And then she had a reason to say no. And I'll say, I see what you did, buddy. I just checked with your mom.
You guys against each other. That's
yeah, yeah, exactly. She said no. I don't know why, but what she said goes. So yeah, that's a no. Sorry, buddy.
Well, that doesn't end either. So my kid's almost 9.
Worse, I know.
And he's still doing it. And I said, son, whatever your mother says, if this is something that, and look, so because me and my wife, anything we've agreed upon beforehand, if she answers no, I know for a fact I'm going to answer no. So I tell my son, whatever she says is exactly what I'm going to say. End of story. And you need to accept her word as it needs to be. I mean, it's that simple. And boy, they'll cry. And okay, I understand. I'm sorry you're upset, but just let them work through the no.
I wonder how many kids have that. When you consider that divorced homes have different rules, and when you consider how many spouses don't necessarily are on the same page, I'll bet it's not the majority of kids now that have that kind of discipline where no means no. That's tough.
Yeah, I'm coaching a father right now, which they're divorced. And my point was like, hey, I know that you're not married anymore, but you guys got to come to common senses and draw those boundaries together, because it's not going to work here and there. So it's an important thing to have the same, yes here and no there. So we keep that on it.
Yeah, and it goes back to you saying you have to fill your cup up. Being in those situations, having your cup full makes it easier to handle and tackle those objectives with your spouse a lot better. For instance, something that I wanted to share with dads and with you guys, something I've been doing with my wife lately. I saw a video. As a TED Talk X person, she was very intelligent. I think she was a psychoanalyst or so. Anyways, long story short, she was in psychology, and she and her husband practiced something, and I thought it was so genius. When she comes home, or he comes home, and one of them is just not feeling the responsibilities of home, or one of them is feeling drained or just tired, so they'll say, hey, I'm at 10%, I'm at 15. Okay, I got the other 85, other 90. Don't worry about it. And that has helped Ainsley and I so much lately, because I'll come home and I'm just exhausted. Or she'll come home, she's the same. She's had a long day of patience, and it's like, babe, I'm at a 20, and she's pregnant. So of course, more days it's going to be her being at 20. And even if I'm not at 20, even if I'm not at 80, I have to suck it up. I have to be like, okay, all right, I can carry the boat. I got this. So it's been something great, and I think a lot of not only keeping your cup full, but a lot of couples need to start practicing that is communicating where you are at mentally and physically, because that is something that kind of communication is something that's picked up by your children. You talk about rites of passage and all these things we're teaching children. Great communication is part of that as well. So
this is the second module that I teach is communication when I go to my containers. Like, how is the communication with the real deeper communication? Like, that is beautiful what you shared, Justin. Great tool. You need to have tools for communication, because your wife has a different story than you. She communicates in a way, you communicate in another way. Most men doesn't know how to communicate. Why? Just like myself. My father didn't communicate with me. My father never asked, hey, how are you feeling? I was like, I don't know. I'm not feeling anything. What that means. I don't know what that means. So that's where my anger work starts to come. When I start to understand, like, oh, I'm angry. And then my wife would say something like, oh, that is more angry. Let me process this anger. Let's start to figure out where this anger coming from. That's why I started doing the somatic, which I get it. It's not easy to tell a man, hey, let's breathe. Let's just see what's present in your body right now. Let's scan your body. I was like, I'm not doing that shit, man. I have something else to do. Let's do the garden. Let's go clean the car or vacuum the house. But I don't want to stop and breathe, lay down on the floor, do breath work. But it was super powerful. Then if someone asks me a deeper question, I can really tune in and say, wow, that was a deeper question. That's the first thing. It's like, oh, okay. Let me see what my body is telling me. Because the body, like I said before, the body keeps the score. Everything is stored on the body. So when you start to release that, we start to feel it, we start to connect more and create an intimacy again. Goes on and on. But communication, that's a beautiful bringing to that. Love that.
So outside of your coaching program with the somatics and all that stuff, what other resources or tools do you recommend to fathers who want to continue their own personal development journey?
I'm going to say a men's group is a powerful tool. And the men's group, here's the thing, like I said, I've been a part of a few, and when you feel safe to share, that's where things happen. Because you can go to a men's group and don't feel don't feel comfortable on that group, but you keep coming and you keep seeing that. So I think that's one thing. The second thing is to put work on himself. It could be physical or mentally, learning more, or like, I need to move more, filling up the cup. I think those two things goes, I want to keep it simple too. I want to keep it doable. One thing quick here, I have another client eating issues, and then we go back to his trauma where his mom said, hey, you have to clean up your plates, otherwise you cannot play. So his trauma was about that. So he had like, oh man, overweight. It's like, I don't have the time, I don't have this. Like, I said, okay, let's do this. I'm gonna do it, and I did it with him. We did fasting, we did, not eating late and all this without adding any exercise. So when they say, I don't have time for this, that's not true. That's another excuse to put in that. Because I lost 10 pounds doing this thing with him without doing any extra workout, just basically on the diet and having the accountability of each other. No, we're going to do it. We took actually just a processed food out and 3 days a week of fasting for 16 hours. So for the ones that say like, oh, I don't have time for this, that's not true. You can create the time somehow.
Absolutely. And the final question I'll wrap us up on is share your favorite story or memory as a dad. What would that be?
Oh, that's a question that hits me. I wanna start crying right now because it's the birth of my kids, and it's a little hard to share, but yeah, it was just when my first one, they were all born at home, all three kids also was born in a pool of water. But this is my favorite story when my wife, she was in intense labor, like what the women go through. We have no idea. And there was a moment that she stopped, she said, I love my life. I'll never forget that moment. And then after that, it was super intense. And then she stopped, says that. It was like the midwives were like, whoa, that was. And then right that, I go down and I put my hands under, and my kid came, and I got to hold my first baby. And then I got to do that 2 more times. It was like the gift of being a father. This is there's no other memory that I have that will overcome this one. Just like holding my first, second, and third child, it was just a dream coming true. And one thing I want to say, that time I was like, I want to be a father. But when I started my journey and really like my fatherhood, it was like, no, I want to be the best father as I can be. No father on this earth is going to beat me. I'm going to give me my presence, my 100%. Of course, I'm not there yet. I'm far away. But it's my goal. It's like, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be firm when I need to be firm. I'm going to say no when I need to say no. I'm going to teach them values. I'm going to teach them ride a bike, and I'm going to be present. Because remember one thing, when I did the restaurant for 10 years, I wasn't present. And again, I have a lot of guilt of not being present. But I can redo it. I can be present now. I can offer that, because it's the thing about quality over quantity is when you really give your 100%. So my goal is to give the 100%. But that was a heavy question, Justin.
Yeah, I did you with it, man. I'm sorry.
That was a beautiful answer. Wow.
So Daniel, where can everybody find you? Where can people plug into your program?
The best one is to go to the website dipcoaching.com, sign up for a newsletter. There is a program that I'm putting. I have a webinar, free webinar, on August 26th. I think it's 8 a.m. my time, so you'd be 10
10 Central.
Yeah, I'll send. I'll put some links, I guess.
We'll post it with the videos.
Yeah, we'll have the webinar, which will be about pornography. Okay. And then I have another webinar, which is free as well. It's September 17. That's the first times. I forgot the title, but is for the first times dad. Because those guys, they're walking to a fatherhood without any support. I did that. Many of us just step in. It's like, oh, I'm a father now, so what do I do? Oh, you can learn how to change a diaper in the second day, if you fear. But to really offer what your kid needs in every stage of life, because it's going to change. You guys know that. Every time, every 3-4 months, it changes. We need support, and we didn't have that. So this webinar is a 4-pillar. It's you, your wife, your kids, and everybody together. So how we do that? It's a very simple one, but I love to point that because we can't forget about the relationship about our wife. And first year is like you like all over, you're doing everything, but you forget about yourself. So we have to have reminders of all those little things. So I have those 2 webinars. That's a good way to connect. And then, Instagram, I'm on and off, to be honest. Sometimes I'm on and putting a lot of information. Sometimes I'm going to step out. But the website to be the best place to go.
And that for those that are listening, that is www.dipcoaching.com. So as we conclude this powerful episode with you, Daniel, we first just want to extend our sincere gratitude for you and you sharing your wisdom and your journey with us. Your passion for guiding fathers to become better leaders is truly commendable. I personally look forward to following you and seeing your program, the Dad in Progress Coaching, to continue to impact dads out there. I'm excited to see what you have in store for the future. So again, thank you, Daniel, for being a driving force and empowering us to be the better fathers that we can be. And your dedication to positive discipline and leadership is really inspiring. So for all of our viewers, just remember, take these valuable insights to heart and join us in striving to be the best fathers that we can be. Like, follow, and share this when you get it. Stay tuned for more empowering episodes. And until then, let's get back to climbing the mountain of fatherhood together. Thank you. And remember, be present, be intentional, and be strong fathers. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify to catch all of our amazing episodes. We will see you in the next one.